everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Another Monday night, we are back in action, all three of us. This wasn't planned, but I suddenly look at the screen and we're all wearing dark colors, grieving the state of Liverpool over here. Not by design, probably because it's winter and black is supposed to attract the sun, whatever it is out there. Actually, we did get as brutally cold as it is from what I see when I open the door occasionally to let Stitch and Leo out. It is pretty brutal out there. I literally took the garbage can around the house to the back. And even that, I was like, yeah, this is just a bit too much over here. But at least the sun was out. Some of the stuff melted. I know I'm rubbing salt into the wounds of Gally over here, who spent the entire day shoveling.
Yeah, pretty much shoveling, snow blowing, clearing walkways, clearing cars, moving cars, dealing with cars and neighbors getting stuck.
Valet service at the same time.
Cutting out, just digging out mailboxes and fire hydrants and all the bullshit that comes when you're a homeowner in the Northeast. And yeah, it was just absolutely awful. 9 inches, 8 inches. I don't give a shit about that. That's nothing. I would have blown through that with one of them little electric shovels. This was literally 3.5, 4 feet of snow with a drift in the middle of my driveway and that heavy shit the plow puts at the end. And yeah. And the whole time I had Kelly and the dog looking out the window how they doing out there?
With hot cocoa. She's like, be careful out there, because after I did the last time, I've only shoveled I think twice so far this year, but the heavy duty one, I think afterwards in the morning show where somebody was like, oh, I think maybe it was Kelly saying you can get a heart attack from that. Maybe that's why Kelly's watching to see when she should call the ambulance.
Absolutely rooting for it. She's probably checking out the life insurance policy, figuring out he might not lose his head in the driveway, but how can I maximize this payout?
Yeah, she's got one phone on 911, the other one on the insurance company to confirm everything. Bickler,
she is the insurance company, seeing that she is the benefits manager at the college that she works at. So I'm pretty sure she'd be filing the claim with herself.
And approved. Bickler, Bickler's coughing. I actually had the cold, but I think it's gone. Still coughing, but Bickler's in the house. Bickler, what's happened?
Nothing, man. I don't know what you guys are going on about. It's in the 40s and rainy here. It's just like winter in the UK.
Really? Must be nice. Be nice. We have a heat wave coming. It's going to be 15 or something tomorrow.
Oh shit. Put those shorts on. No, it's yeah, I mean, we had a lot of panic down here for not a lot of anything. I think it hit just to the west and to the north of us, but we're just in a southeast pocket where we kind of just got skipped, which I'm not complaining about.
Shelton is in the house. Ryan, everybody, as they jump on, do hit the thumbs up. If you're not watching us on YouTube, we're live on YouTube and Facebook tonight. We actually posted a question for tonight's discussion, similar to last week, a lot later this week, because I think it's a bit more of a limited topic than anything else. But Ryan says 8 degrees, 9 inches of snow. Probably it's lake effect thing. I'm not understanding this, because Ryan says the upside is my wife has been out of town since Friday. Today I showered the first time since Thursday. So is the wife hosing you down at home when she's home?
No, it's that when she came home, he had to shower again. And during that time, he didn't care and he didn't shower and he just stank. Glad to know somewhere in the greater Chicago area, there is someone who stinks.
Nice. Okay.
I love you, Ryan.
Today, obviously, since we've been gone last week, we had the Champions League game where things looked better. I think it's slightly exaggerated that we played so great or something like that. I think this is where the score determines how we look at the game. It was better, and it was against French opposition, but it wasn't really necessarily, that much. I didn't think that people made it sound like we played how we played against Real and City or something last year. I didn't think it was that great, but obviously better. And then we have the Saturday debacle where it's just, I don't even know where to begin on that one. We fall behind, we catch up, and I think for the 5th or 6th time this year, past 90 minutes, we let a goal in, this time for a loss. The other ones, a couple of them have been for The Chelsea one was a loss. Crystal Palace was a loss, but then the Leeds and Fulham was basically robbing us of 2 points over there. Abdul Rahim is in the house. Good morning, sir. Alaikum salam. Tony is in the house as well. Welcome aboard, everybody. Like I say, as you join, hit that thumbs up. You can't imagine how much it helps over there. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe as well. Okay, so I figured today is a great day for me to bring out the pie back into action and the blame pie over there, because obviously there's a lot of talk in your absence, Bickler, while you were going out training people on God knows what you're training people on. We were talking about, with everybody's input, we did the slot in and slot out conversation. So the reason I want to do the pie this week is I don't know, as I look at where we are at right now, we'll probably talk about a little bit about the game as well, but in terms of like when I look at where we are at right now, when I watched that game on Saturday, there is so much that I am like disappointed with, upset at, whether it's some of the players' performances, whether it's the lack of options. If I said, why aren't we doing this? Because we can't, because that's the person is not there. Whether some of maybe the decision making of the manager as well. He's definitely not free of blame, but I felt like he's not the 95% of blame that everybody makes him out to be. And it's not like if we made a change, there were a lot of rumors last night. It almost felt like I would wake up this morning for the morning show and there'd be news about Slot and Xavi and all that kind of stuff. That did not happen, but I felt like even if that does happen, all the other things I looked at, the rest of the pie is still going to be there. I don't know how much better it will be. Where are you at right now? We'll afterwards go into the comments and I'll give you guys how people cut the slices overall, but kind of want to get your overall take, Bickler, in terms of where you are.
I think that I'm at the point where, like, growing up a Detroit sports fan, I feel very confident in talking about failure in sports. And I think, like, we're at the point where it gets bad enough that I think that you can take that pie and I think that you could probably give everybody a pretty good slice. And I think that's typically what happens when things get bad enough. Just like when things get good enough, we do the inverse. But heavy lies the crown, and I think we tend to lean very, very heavily on the manager position. Whether you're not doing well, it's the manager. Whether you're doing great, it was all Jurgen Klopp as a genius, and nothing to do with like how we recruited, nothing to do with the players that we got and how they contributed, right? And I think it's like, I think we probably assign too much of the blame on both sides and too much of the praise on the other side on the manager when it's an entire organization. I think in this case specifically, I think this was always going to be a tough year. I think we were always going to be in a bit of a transition. And I think the expectations from this fan base were out of whack based on last year's success. I don't think a lot of people accounted for the degree of turnover. I don't think the club accounted for, the tragedy over the summer. And then what would happen if we lost a player like Diaz, who gave us a really direct threat on the left that we couldn't replace. So I think there was a lot of things that I think there was a lot of gambles that were made, and I think they don't all necessarily came off, but I don't think we necessarily thought they would all come off. So I just think that, like, I think this is a big transition year. I think that I have to place some blame on this manager because I think going into a transition year, I always asked the question last year, what's his plan B? What does he do when he and we really never got an answer, because I think we saw what happened is the times we did have to come back, we usually got some piece of individual brilliance from Mo Salah. And now that tends to be drying up, I don't know that we're getting that. So like, I think the jury is still out, is like, what is the plan B when this manager plays from behind? And I think that now that he has a summer under his window, he got all these players in, like the fact that I don't see this brand of football getting any clearer worries me just for the longevity of him at the club.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, obviously, we talked a lot about it last week, Gally. I don't know if what happened over the last 7 days. Well, I guess I'll ask you first. We were in a situation where I think we were mostly, it's not full the manager, but we assigned some of the blame to him, things that we're not seeing and stuff. I guess let's start with this. Over the last 7 days, with the Marseille game and then the Bournemouth game, are you about the same area? Because it was a little bit of goods. A little bit.
Yeah,
of
it's a little good, little bad. I don't think it's all on the manager. I think the players have skated by a bit in this whole season, to be honest, in a lot of ways. Sir Z was talking in the comments. I think at the beginning of the year, we slated the new players. Excuse me. Now it feels like the new players are starting to kind of come to their form, and the older players are the ones that are kind of letting us down. And when we talk about the match, we can, talk about that performance from both. I mean, the three most influential, most senior, probably world-class players on the pitch, I would argue were the three worst players on the pitch for Liverpool, and Mo Salah, Virgil van Dijk, and Alisson. And
Yeah.
I think, we can get to the Alisson thing because I think we have to have this conversation. You can call him the best in the world and the best we might have ever seen. That is absolutely true. I think it's 4 matches. Basically 80% of shots that have been taken at his goal have gone in and hit the back of the net. We're not conceding many big chances, but we're giving up a lot of goals. And more times than not, a keeper of his class should be making those saves, just like a player of Virgil's class should be clearing those balls and not making the calamitous mistake he does on the first goal. But if that pie, the things I would take off that pie, because you can talk about hard lines, you can talk about being unlucky, you can talk about all these different little references, which are basically just coach speak or excuses. But the things you can't blame, in my opinion, even though they're not great, are the supporters, because supporters support what they see and they respond
that's
to
the
what
AI
but
ingredient.
I'm just the supporters, VAR, referees. I'm having none of that, because that is giving these players, coaches, and the front office an out, and none of them deserve it. They all hold a different level of blame at different periods. Look, do I think Richard Hughes left them short? Yes. Do I think it's as short as everyone wants to make it out? No, because the coach doesn't want to play the players. And at the end of the day, the one thing where I will say when it came to Klopp, and I got mad last week and said, can we stop romanticizing about the time when Klopp was here? So I'm not going to tell Klopp stories, but if I'm going to talk about criticism to Slot, one of the reasons it's so glaring is that Klopp made every single player feel involved. He convinced Tyler Morton twice he couldn't go out on loan when he wanted to go play senior football, but he convinced him that there were going to be minutes and moments and just being in training would be worth it. Because I think they looked at him like he's going to put his arm around me. Like some point in the canteen, he's just going to tell me how good a footballer I am. And it's going to make this month of February where I don't make a senior performance worth it. And I don't think this guy does that with the players on the fringe of his squad that are senior players that need confidence. And then when injuries happen, he's called on those players. But the players themselves on the pitch, they're the ones who have dropped the points. Coach isn't putting them in the best positions, but these guys are winners, and they shouldn't be being done in by long throw in after long throw in, and then throwing their hands up and whining at referees looking for fouls that are completely non-existent. If that were Arsenal, you all know what we'd be saying about them today.
Yeah. I mean, what's the only Hughes parts? I mean, I feel like that slice probably should be a lot bigger than, because I do agree. I mean, here's the thing. When it comes to Hughes and stuff, I think my biggest pet peeve is when, and we talked about this before, right? If the gay thing happened, which is, 5 to 10 minutes off or 30 minutes or whatever, I think we all sat here and said that's the perfect summer in terms of like the incomings, what we brought in and stuff. Just like we didn't, Bickler, I don't think they expected all these like major injuries, not like he's out 2 weeks, he's out a month, but like year injuries like Leone and Bradley and Isak and stuff like that. But I feel like, they also did not account for, the ridiculous drop in form that you see from some of these other players. Like, it kind of like what Galley's saying, like, or you were saying actually earlier about like Diaz, right? They were like, well, we still got Mo on the right-hand side, though, not thinking that this is the version of Mo that you're suddenly going to have this year compared to what you had last year. My biggest thing over there is, and I think this is the advantage and disadvantage of having a manager versus coach, there are some players on here that we kind of knew at the end of last year that this manager did not trust or was not going to give minutes to, but they were still considered part of the depth because ultimately he's not in charge of, the squad. I feel like there's a lot of guys over here that in Slot's mind was never depth. And we had a similar thing with Klopp as well, we did have a smaller squad, and it's always easier when you have an established system to say, hey, this is where you plug in. Whereas when you're transitioning the system, I mean, heck, freaking Soboslai doesn't know where he fits in the system, leave alone the guy on the bench to know what his role is going to be.
It feels like the end of Brendan Rodgers to me when he just was over tinkering with the side a bit. You know what I mean? Where he just had a tendency to sort of, I don't know. This is so tough, man. I go back and forth and all over the map on this, depending on, I think the thing that like I just keep coming back to is how long have we had with this manager that have some sort of identifiable brand of football, and all that we've really got is slower, more practical, which is great when you're winning and dreadful when you're not. And so like I think it's a style of play. I think it's a person. I think it was always going to be a struggle from a personality standpoint coming in after a huge personality like Klopp. And I think maybe there's something about our ownership that liked that and thought like, hey, we just want the opposite, and maybe that'll be good. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, like there just hasn't been enough progression. I don't even see a vision or a plan of where to go. Although I will say, that being said, last 3 matches in some sort of a 4-2-2-2, like I think is the best sort of cohesive football that I've seen. And even though the results haven't been there, I said like it was like 3 matches ago, I thought that draw was better than the handful of wins that we've had this year. And I think that like the result, like I think this result this week is really a microcosm of the entire season. A collection of individual errors punctuated by a set piece conceded. That's been our season in a nutshell. And I think it's just happened too much. But I feel for the manager, though.
In that sense, yeah, because we talked about this last week. I mean, Gally, where this team comes back from like situations that, well, they put themselves in, I guess, like this week, for example. So there is still a fight in the team to... And I mean, heck, I felt it could have gotten ugly pretty darn fast, especially after the second goal came in. That first couple of minutes there, it was like, man, this can get really ugly today. But credit to them, they did fight their way back into the game, and they did tie it up. And really, once again, like Victor says, another set piece, ridiculous defending on that one again, and we concede the goal. When I say, like, when you look at it, I'll start with you making the pie, and then we'll kind of like go through the comments and stuff like that, and we can kind of argue over it. But what percentage do you put in there? Because I know you said you eliminated basically everybody except players, slots, and
I think it's probably. I think I'm laying it somewhere in the. I think the manager / coach has to have the largest slice, because I would say, if you ask me, from August, when the team was constructed, to today, who has consistently been the least consistent during that whole period? I'd say it's the head coach and his approach to what's happening, the tactics are needed, how he's managing the squad, the rotating of the players. And I think his lack of rotation has played into some of the injuries, and I think it's played into some of the problems. I think where the players take a lot of the blame is nobody forced Isak to force his way out of Newcastle the way he did, and it negatively impacted the season. We played a role in it as a club, and I think Hughes and them have to own a little bit of that. No one made Ekitike take his shirt off and get that second yellow and just lose his mind against Southampton, which leads to him being suspended against Crystal Palace, forcing Isak to play and getting injured. Like, these moments actually weren't just like a 1-2 moment. They actually built on each other, and they made things go further. And I think they created more problems for the manager. I'd probably say, I'm going to say it's 45 Slot, 20 the front office. What's that leave me? 35 to the players.
Oh, man, I was going to leave it to you. I was going to hope that it was going to be like a pie that Bickler nibbled on the end. It's going to end up with 95 or something like that.
Yeah, I left that 10% to Va just to fuck with everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
Bickler, make me a pie.
Well, lucky for you, I've already done the math, so don't bother double checking. But I think if I'm looking at this, I'm going probably 50% the manager on Slot. I'd say 35 the players. I'd say 15 the front office.
Fair.
Okay. I was going to go 50, 25, 25. 50
No, we're
being
in the same.
manager.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, I think we're in most cases. But here's my thing. The reason I'll ask you guys, but when you make the percentage much smaller for, like Edwards and them Galley, doesn't some of Slot's situation stem from that? That's one. And two, I guess the reason I am more frustrated now is the thing that, and this is an Edwards thing. This is like Ward thing. This is how they roll. They playing long term. I understand that. They look for value. I understand that. I'm all for that. We praised that in the past. But you have to be able to react and adjust. And when you see this, the state the squad was in, and I'm not saying gay and stuff. We talked about that, how it wasn't going to happen with the wages and stuff. But you knew what this team needed immediately during this time to help Slots fix some things or be able to rotate, like you're saying. And it's the end of January and we haven't done anything. So I think that's why I'm increasing it a bit more. I think it's unfair to judge them on how the squad was built in some ways, but not reacting at all. I find that kind of like a bit more criminal, and I think throws the manager under the bus.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I guess my question is what player did you want him to sign? And I know everyone says, well, it's not my job. It's their job to find the players. And they have a list of players. But, like, has there been a player signed outside of Mark Ahey or Semenyo in the Premier League that you are like, Liverpool should have been in for that guy? Should they have been in for Conor Gallagher for the money that Spurs paid? Now, maybe when he left Chelsea, it made sense. But now, I don't think so. Like, should they have been in for the two foreign strikers that came in and went to West Ham? I'm not so sure. Like, there isn't much activity happening. I think it's hard to convince players in a World Cup year to switch teams, especially to a club like Liverpool where there's no guaranteed for minutes. Because everybody keeps doing this whole, like, can't let Robertson leave. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy he's not leaving. But you can't let him leave. You can't let him leave. We need him to play center back. Someone's got to play center back. Joe Gomez is hurt. There's every chance in the world Konate starts tomorrow against Karabag. And if he isn't starting tomorrow, he will start against Newcastle. And here's the thing. He's going to start every match the rest of the way. So if he's fit. So if you're Nathan Collins, are you really fighting to get out of Brentford? If you're like where I think Hughes and Edwards, everyone said earlier, I think there was someone in the chat talking about how, they didn't help Slot by giving him the head coaching title by not being manager. He didn't get say in transfers. I'd say he had some pretty damn good say in transfers because Jarrell Kwanzaa, Elliott, and Tyler Morton were sent out of the club this summer. And I'm pretty sure that they saw a few of those guys as having some value. And it's funny because should the manager everybody wants to come in to replace Slot? He tried to sign Jarrell Kwanzaa on loan, and he tried to sign Tyler Morton and buy him twice. So he's probably like, damn, I would have liked some of those guys as squad players. They brought McConnell back. Supposedly he'll be fit by mid-February. Maybe he gives you a little depth. I think the manager actually, though, I know Paul nods his head. I think the manager would tell you right now, give him 2 weeks in training. He has more faith in him pulling a shift in the midfield if he's required than he does putting Endo in the midfield for this side right now. And I think that's the problem. There are players he refuses to play. That it's got to be a disconnect, but they went out and sold everybody that he wanted them to sell. He's kind of got to work with the ingredients they give him to finish it out from there.
See, I disagree to that. I'm not saying that he did not want those guys sold. And maybe he said, yes, I don't see a future. But if you name all those guys, they're the guys who had value to sell. We don't know if that list also included.
It also included Diaz, but we all got up in arms now because we've watched the fallout of Gakpo every single match and we're losing our minds.
No, I mean, when the Diaz deal happened, I mean, you can't like do revisionist history now. I think we were like, no one was happy, but everybody understood. No, what I'm saying is when you say he was okay with those guys being sold, I almost feel like there were a bunch of guys that he was okay with being sold, but the only ones who were sold were ones that had value. Whereas guys like Endo and Chiesa, who he still did not consider as options, stayed. Does that make sense? I mean, that's where I think the disconnect you're mentioning is there. So it's not like, he wanted those guys gone and these guys kept. I think he basically said...
The manager said, I want to play with a smaller squad and got the same amount of senior players as last year's squad. He just actually was hoping to use more of this year's team, but he hasn't because of the Isak injury. Let's be real. The Isak injury, the late start for Isak and the injury derailed basically this season right up until the moment he broke his leg. Because the moment he scores that goal against Spurs, people think this is what we bought, and now we move forward. We start to play with the two strikers, or we play with one. How nice would it be to see a fit and firing Hugo Ekitike for 60 minutes, then 30 minutes every single time, and not have to watch the 20 minutes of him loafing around the pitch because he's just knackered. It's not even his fault. He can't give you anymore. He's trying to give you everything he can, to the point where the manager sits him and then he gets shit on for sitting him to try to have a sub to come from the bench. I don't think the manager can win at this point, and I think that's where I feel bad for him, because I actually think more of the fan base is ready for him to leave than they are to keep him here.
Yeah, that's fair. But like I say, I think when you talk about, I don't think he wanted probably a small squad, but I don't think he considered Bickler, Chiesa, and Endo as part of that squad as options. Because, I was personally, I kept saying this, that I didn't think Chiesa was staying based on what we saw at the end of last season when he wasn't playing, even when we had nothing to lose and we were all partying and stuff, then going to the games. So, we kept a bunch of people that didn't have value to sell as options for the squad. And I don't know if I'll ask you this, I guess, the change that he made, right, to the 4-2-2-2, for example, is that kind of came too early to Slot's plans because of the results, or he kind of fast forward and said, hey, old one is not working anyway, might as well try the new one?
I don't know. I don't know if that was something that had been in the fold all along and he was going to try to pull that off, but just, sat on it and then went to it when it wasn't working. I don't really know. I think I want to go back to you saying that, I think the depth that the squad had was not the depth the manager had planned on. So did you think that, do you think that he had other acquisitions that he thought were going to add his depth? Who else was going to be that depth?
Oh, I don't know. I'm assuming when you're the coach, I'm assuming he's given names and he's yep, that would work, that would not, or whatever, as they discuss, different players. But, when we look at the players that were gone that Gally was listing, I can see them saying, and we kind of said, hey, you know what? If you're never going to be at that top level, which is very difficult to do at a club like Liverpool, that's fine if you want to if you want to cash in and convert it to other people that we think is going to be a long-term Liverpool player. My point is the names that we're saying in terms of that were moved on were all that were easy to move on from financially because it was beneficial and it would look good on paper. We hung on to the ones that would not look good on paper regardless of the consequence.
Yeah, I just think going into it, I think we were just short to begin with. Because if you look at the depth essentially outside of Chiesa, the depth is essentially players that are brand new or youth kids. You're looking at Rio, you're looking at Leone, you're looking at all new players is essentially your depth. And so I just think that we were one or two short in a couple spots. We didn't see the ACL injury coming. We obviously didn't see the Isak injury coming. We should have seen the Gomez injury coming. It's just, I think we're just short a few places. I just don't, I think when you lose what you lost over this summer, that's a multiple window rebuild. And I think that's not something that we, off the back of a championship, really accounted for.
We talk a lot about the Jota tragedy, as we should, for the real life purpose of it. And don't clip me up on this, people, and try to at me and Gally doesn't care. That's not what I'm saying. We went through this since July 4th on this channel, or July 3rd. But I don't know that anyone's ever actually talked about the footballer they lost. That they lost a left wing, right wing, number 10, second striker, the different type of striker, a super sub to come from the bench. What he would have brought. If you had actually signed, and I don't know that they would have got both if Jota hadn't passed, but if you had ended the window with Wirtz, Ekitike, and Isak, and you still have Jota in the fold, and Gakpo's your fifth attacking force,
true.
It's a different world, or maybe they buy different players, maybe they keep Diaz. And there's so many different permutations to what might have happened. You know, we all laughed about the Darwin thing, and the Darwin lovers come out now and they show all these stats and whatever. And let's not go to anything like farcical, because that's not what we're trying to do here. But part of this whole thing was we talk about that 4-2-2 formation. I think the 4-2-2 formation was probably somewhere in the distance as an option to get these players playing together. And should I need this? But the thought was probably in like a post Mo Salah world. And the post Mo Salah world got brought to the forefront a lot sooner. One, because Mo Salah stopped playing well. And two, because he lost his effing mind that day at Ellen Road and decided to force the manager's hand and create a stand between him and the manager. And you can argue whether or not they've been better. You know, that is the first game they lost. It is one in the league that Mo Salah started. Last time they lost a game was one that Mo Salah started. And he wasn't good, by the way. He was not good against Bournemouth. His decision-making wasn't good. He didn't look great. Now, how much of that is playing alongside Gakpo and not Ekitike? Could it look different? You know, I didn't think Wirtz looked as bright as he has in some of the recent matches either. But he was really good against Marseille, so I don't want to make this a Mo Salah thing. Look, I don't think anyone in a million years thought Mo Salah's legs would go as quickly as they did between last season and this season. And we probably should have saw it coming because he wasn't the same player from February onwards. He got the big money. He had to get the money. It was the right thing by the club. Now the club's going to have to make decisions on how they use it. Like, I ask you guys, do you think Bournemouth looks different if it's Ekitike and Frimpong playing in those front two spots instead of Gakpo and Mo? Because there are a few times where that ball gets feathered into Mo. And if Frimpong's running onto that, he may make a bad decision. But damn it, he is getting there ahead of the defender. And
I think that's what you're missing up top. I think when you lost Diaz as well, the speed, and I think that's what you're getting from Frimpong is speed. And we thought in the offseason that we got a lot of speed, but nobody saw it's coming. That's, you know, Mo's lack of, decline in speed is pretty much getting close to my decline of speed. Nothing gets close to that, but it's still pretty darn close. I mean, yeah, that ball that he was chasing, I was like, man, like a year ago, not even like 5 years ago, like Mo gets to that kind of deal. Steven says changing managers will change absolutely nothing within the players. These players are in different stages of grieving process. Let me ask you this real quick, and then I do want to get to the what people listed their answers so we can respond to it, Bickler. I did not want to, I mean, first of all, I didn't make the pie. I'm not a good baker. AI made that pie. So obviously, you know, that's why there's like two of the same things and stuff. But two questions for you there. As you can see, the fans are on there twice. So the AI must know something we don't. I probably do want to.
Those are the fans in the stadium and the fans on Twitter. That's the difference.
Yes.
The electronic fans and the in-stadium fans.
AI knows best. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, and I know like fans get offended. It's like, they're like, we pay the wages, blah, 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 kind of this thing. But I do feel like maybe I should take away that 50% and give like a 5 or 10 to the fans in terms of the support this team has gotten. I know fans are fickle, and we probably shouldn't look at social media to judge it. Exactly like Bickler, Gally is saying, there is the social media fans, and then, you know, like the regular fans and fans in the stands and all that kind of stuff, or the sensible fans. But there should be a bit for that, I think, in there, because I know we have expectations and stuff, but I feel like the lack of support, the decline in supports, and how this team has treated. I saw Jamie Carragher talking about, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, in terms of like the decline in support and how the fan base has approached their title-winning manager within 6 months. I don't know. I just can't get myself to come to grips with it. The other thing I feel like is unfair to give a slight to, because it's not a blame thing. But how much do you think that does have an impact? We kind of talked about it last week, but how much do you think it has an impact?
I don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but I think it has very, very little impact right now. I mean, are these players probably still grieving the loss of a teammate? Absolutely. Like, I just don't believe that at this point that has anything to do with the fact that you're not looking to hold an offside line in an obvious situation, or like any of the individual errors that we're seeing in these matches. I don't think that's a loss of concentration because their head's not in it because they're grieving. I think that like collectively, I think there is just not a buy-in from this side into what the manager is doing. And I don't know if that's comes from the fact that like they're used to a very strong personality in Jurgen that was a tight-knit kind of grassroots like people manager, and you're getting more of a calculated business manager in Slot. I don't know if it's a switch in personalities. I don't know if it's the fact that he's not communicating tactically what he wants to do very well. But like to me, I mean, we've seen the clips of the conversation of him with Jones. We've seen a lot of these like clips where like players don't necessarily seem to be clear on instructions on the pitch, which is concerning because you have all week to work on these things. So like, I think there's some sort of a divide in this dressing room, and I don't know if there's like it feels like a reluctancy of the old guard to sort of change into this new regime, because I don't feel like I'm getting that same sort of noise from the newer players right now. And so I kind of wonder if it has to do with that split. I just personally feel like it probably has very little to do with Jota. And I think on the whole, Gallius, at the beginning of this pod, I think the players have skated, and I think they've skated because this like supporters fell in love with this manager, Jurgen Klopp, who brought these titles, who brought this side from a mid-table team all the way up, and really built a brand of football that was exciting and one of the best in Europe. And when you lose that kind of a personality and you replace it with somebody else, I think that like there's an allegiance to these players that have won those titles that fans don't owe a new manager. And so like, even though we got a title off the last season, and I just don't know that fans feel that sort of loyalty like they do to a lot of these guys that they've seen make runs at quads and multiple titles and like multiple, like, you know, cups. So Tim, you're muted, my man.
I don't think I expect that kind of loyalty, like that level of loyalty, but I guess I didn't expect this little loyalty, like this lack of loyalty. And I realize, you know, fans are fickle. It's all results based. What have you done for me lately kind of thing. I just did not think it would change as much. But for the players, Serzi says, I don't think the loss impacted new players as much as the older players. Now we find out that Konate's father has been sick for the last year. I did not personally know that, for example. I mean, we were talking about that this morning, that, you know, he lost friends and then his father within like 6 months. So in some ways, I know like we'll probably get to it, like the lineups, but in some ways, I hope he does not come back and feel like he has to come back. Everybody deals with grief differently. We were talking about with Matush. We both lost our dads with Matush around the same age, I think, too. I was in college. I think he was as well, or like late teens. And like he like stopped playing for a couple of years, whereas I wanted to get back on the pitch. I wanted distraction. I wanted to get out there. I wanted to kick somebody instead and get that out of my system that way. So everybody deals with it differently. So I just hope if he does come back, he doesn't come back because he feels like he has to, and there is no other center backs or anything like that.
But I mean, at the end of the day, I think these guys, I mean, we saw it, we've seen it in other sports. We saw, you know, famously, Brett Favre played, I think, the day after his father died, and the argument was, my dad would want me to play today. Like that's what he raised me to do. I mean, that guy for the Celtics played literally the night after his sister was killed in a car accident in Seattle. You know, played for the Celtics in a playoff game and balled. I think he scored 50 points. Like, he was amazing. That little guy there. Oh, Isaiah Thomas, the one that the Celtics had for a while. Like, there's a lot of these stories in sports. So if Konate, they're professionals. And that's the thing, to Paul's point before. Like, I think, look, if you want to have an argument of whether or not singing the song on the 20th minute and reminding them in the middle of every single game is beneficial or not to the players, I'll hear it. I'll listen to it. If you want to tell me that the memorials or the big moments against, like, did it change the first 10 minutes against the Wolves match because of how big the tribute was for that match? Probably, right? For both sides, by the way.
Yeah.
And both sets of supporters. But where I do disagree with Z, and I've said this on a lot of pods before, I think it impacted the new players just as much, if not more, at the beginning of the season, because I think the entire preseason was so disjointed from, like, you're supposed to go overseas and bond as a team. Yeah. And they went overseas and they didn't train because players literally didn't want to. And I think the club was right for that, by the way. But, like, They didn't have the karaoke nights and the tandem bike rides and the ice cream socials and all the stuff we joke about, right? When we see it. I think it was hard for the new players. And if you're a kid like Kirkez and you're 21 years old and all you want is to hang out with Andy Robertson and talk about being the left back at Liverpool and what it means, and all he can do is mourn.
Yeah.
I think that's difficult. And I think that's I just think that's really difficult. And I think that put all these players in a weird spot. And that's why I think guys like Jones, who adapted to Wirtz, you see their relationships on the pitch. The guys whose relationships were formed off the pitch have the best relationships on the pitch. And I think we're still waiting to see that happen. And I think it's been delayed. And I think if anything, that's what the Jota tragedy did. It hit every single person in a different way. And I'm willing to give them the grace for it. But I will say it's January 26th. And now they got to figure out together with that grace, they got to figure out how they can finish this season strong, go as far in both cups they can. And more importantly than anything, they need to make sure that they're one of those teams in whatever pot they can find themselves in next year in the Champions League draw.
Yeah. I mean, I think in terms of what Z's saying, I think I agree with what your take, where it's probably affected them, not basically in a grieving kind of way, but more like an awkwardness kind of way, where if you've ever been in a situation where, you know, people are sad, where you don't even know the person, but you feel like you should be sad for it. It's like a really awkward situation, and you don't know if you want to join in grieving, because then it's going to look like you're faking it because you didn't even know this person. Do you want to cheer them up? Because then it feels like you're insensitive and you're not understanding the grieving. So it's almost like even more difficult, like you said, for the ones who are outside, I think. But yeah, I do think it's still a factor. I definitely do not want to give it a slice or anything like that. But I think anybody, and you know what, Mitush was talking about this. So I do want to give him credit on that. But I thought it was an excellent point that when this happened this summer, right? How many people over here, Steven is talking about, the today's fan being an absolute disgrace, but how many people in the chat over here and stuff said, we don't give a damn what happens this year? There's more important things these guys have to do. With
life is more important. This
right?
puts life in perspective.
I mean, he brought that up this morning. I had totally forgotten. So full credit to Matush for that. And how many of us said that? Doesn't matter. I don't care if they don't even qualify for the Champions League this year. Blah, blah. Everybody said that over here. And then freaking 10 weeks into the season, after the win stopped, fire this guy, fire that guy. He's done and stuff like that. And that's what's kind of gets on my nerves. Okay, let's get to what people put. Like I said, I did post it later today. So I think I will go back to and we'll go through it and I'll let you guys respond. I'll start with Facebook first. Stephen Conway Williams doesn't know how to play the game. He just said Arne Slot is not close to Jurgen Klopp, whoever the hell that is, as a great manager. Okay, I guess. Thanks. And you don't have to
scream. He gave the whole pie. He gave the whole pie to Arne and he dedicated it to Jurgen.
Yes, and he did it. He did it screaming because it's in all caps.
All caps. So that immediately puts him over 55 in terms of an age demographic.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
It's all Slot's fault. Okay, Alex Clacy says, unfortunately for Slots, you can't rest players and rotate when not playing well. You can't do that with a coach/manager. They can only be replaced, and he hasn't been good enough for too long. Whether it's entirely his fault or not, that's the way it is perceived. If he had Edwards or Hughes or whoever telling him to get these players or play a certain way when he didn't think it was right, but still did, well, then he's too weak for the job. Do you guys agree to? I know what he's saying, but that's not how business works. And I hate to say it, this is at the end of the day a business. You have your responsibility. The accountants can go to the marketing team and be like, you know what? I know I'm having these numbers over here, but you guys are not doing this shit right.
Understand where he comes from. I don't know that I agree with the comment.
Bickler, your take on Alex's take.
I mean, the boat makes a big deal. Are we rowing a rowboat or are we in a fucking yacht? You know what I mean? Like, I think it matters if you're captaining a ship, right? Like, I think what you're given probably makes a difference. I think that whole thing is operating under the assumption that Hughes, Slot, and Edwards were all aligned in terms of squad numbers and depth. And maybe that's the case, and maybe it isn't. I don't think we know that. But I don't know. I just think it's really tough to have the kind of turnover you had in one window and the injuries and the amount of tragedy and all the other things that went on, and then put that entirely on the manager and say, well, that's your job. I think that feels harsh to me.
That's fair.
Fair.
I agree.
Yeah.
Chris says it'd be nice if it was as simple as this. I think he's talking about regarding giving the whole pie to Slots. Fact is, putting together and maintaining a winning Premier League team comes with a huge amount of variables. Liverpool's season was a unique one from the events of summer and has been plagued with too many alterations to those variables. You can't hold an individual responsible. It's too simplistic. He doesn't cut the pie. He doesn't want to make crooked slices, but I think he agrees that the whole, unlike the other Steven on the other side screaming, he's not giving the whole pie to Slot over here. Cersei says, of course, he blames Linders and Gakpo. And there's no shock.
I mean, that's pretty fair. I'm surprised he didn't give the pie to Mane in favor of Arne Slot.
Not having Mane is the biggest slice, yeah. Mostly on Hughes and whoever's in charge of the transfers. Secondly, whoever's in charge of the conditioning. Our players should not be tiring after 60 minutes and then Slots. Tactics and team talks are all on Slots. This conditioning thing is a good point, I think. What do you guys make of that? Because I know the assistant manager is always a huge deal until, he's never a huge deal until he leaves and suddenly, what was the guy? I always forget his name. Bovak or Buvak?
Buvac?
Is that what his name was? Like, what are we gonna do? He's leaving, and then Pep Linders showed up, and he was like, "I got a book on this." The conditioning, is that Bickler just as simple as not having enough people in the squad playing more than they should, a lot of people coming from different leagues, or is it the coaching and conditioning?
I mean, I think there's multiple things at play. You have a strength and conditioning coach, and then you have an analytics department. To me, it sounds like the problem that a lot of people have is more with the analytics department than it is with strength and conditioning, because essentially what it's saying is we're telling the manager when to pull players based on analytics that we've tied into their strength and conditioning program. Like they're running all their stuff that says their wear and tear and how likely they are to get a soft tissue injury based on their minutes and stuff. And I think that something there has changed, because pretty sure that the gaskets on that would have exploded under Jurgen Klopp, just looking at Robbo's minutes over the course of a 3-week period where he plays, 3 times a week under Jurgen. So I think something there has changed. And I think it's a combination of potentially that change not necessarily being a bad thing, but it being a bad thing if you're not a deep squad.
That's fair. How about you, Gally?
I do agree with that. I mean, we saw it on the weekend with Kirkez. I mean, he was yanked at halftime because he was basically told before the match, you can pull him at 45 or you can pull him at 60. And I think in his mind, he thought to himself, I might as well take him off now because I'm probably going to I've already used one of my subs. Yeah. So I don't want a random window where I got to then take up another window. So this is a free one. I'll get him on. I think Slot plays a little poker there. I think he kind of looks up into the press box and says, "Oh, you guys want to sell Andy Robertson over to Tottenham? I'll show you what I think of my vice captain. I'll put him on it when he's needed. When your medical guys tell me my left back that I want to play 100 minutes a day."
By the way, because usually when somebody has minute limits, it will be the other way around. And I felt it would be a 2-in-1. It would be exactly what you're saying. I'm glad you brought it up. And also would be like, well, he didn't have full 90. He didn't even have 60 for sure. So would it be a safer bet to start with Robo and then sub Kirkison?
I think he had just spent a whole week literally throwing flowers at Kirkez's feet about how he could play these minutes, how good he was against Marseille, just how dedicated he's been to the side. He was so good in that press conference. Kirkez was never in a million years would I think someone with hair that bad could sit up there and speak such good English. And he was so good. I was so impressed with him. Me and Kazi were making fun of it on Friday morning, but it was really an outstanding performance by him. And look, the thing about the sports science guys, they were around when Klopp was here because every once in a while he'd use them to throw them under the bus to say things like, well, I couldn't play this guy today, or I had to take this guy off because they're warning me about this stuff. But let's be real. It was the first riff of the whole Edwards and Klopp world was I still manage from the gut feeling inside my stomach that tells me whether or not I pull this guy out. And Edwards and them were saying, well, we use numbers and analytics to identify players. And they got away from that the last couple of years. And we don't have to make this a Schmacka versus Edwards, but the difference is, and there was an article, I forget who wrote it. It was this week that said a lot of this Liverpool squad is down, like where this squad is, a lot of it is down to the fact that they didn't have long-term planning because for the last 2.5 years, Klopp was here. He was in full control, and he's the one who adopted we'll give extensions to the old players I love because they're my guys and they're warriors. He's the one who allowed the Wijnaldums to run down their contracts and never bought a replacement for Mo, forced out players that we weren't ready. We saw Bobby leave for free, Origi leave for free, Keita leave for free. Like, that's on his watch. It changed the squad. So I do think that in some ways we aren't giving it a lot of credit. We talk about not buying players 2 summers ago. Part of the not buying players that summer was resetting the financial stability of the club to allow them to do what they did last summer. And to Paul's point, what they need to do over the next 2 to 3 windows. And I think we all hoped that would happen in January. But I don't know that there's a lot of value out there in January. And if these guys have shown one thing, they don't buy when it's not value. So I think the sports science guys are making some of the calls, but in a lot of ways, that doesn't change, Arne Slot not seeing Ramsey as a viable option, even in a FA Cup match against a team in League One. So if you go and run Kirkez or you run Soboslai into the red, because you couldn't play Calvin Ramsey for 30 minutes? Is that on the analytics guys or is that on the guy with the big brain?
I don't even know if it is on the analytics guys at all. Like, basically they're saying, hey, this is the risk you're taking, right? It's kind of like a risk reward kind of thing. The longer you keep the guy there. And let's face it. I mean, the thing is, I don't put that on the conditioning team, especially, or like the injuries, just because this is the same team that didn't get injured last year. Like, and we were like, hey, it's the new system. They get the rest as they play. It's a lot slower, so it's a lot more sustainable and stuff like that. We kind of like praised it. I mean, some of these injuries like Isak, Leone and stuff like that, they're just like freak injuries. It's not something that, he shouldn't have played. Or I know he got blamed for how he went into the bowl to get his leg broken somehow. But I mean,
that's just some Irish hate we got in our Discord channel.
Can't we just shortcut this and start buying players based on like genetic profile, like DNA testing? Like, there's got to be some way that we could just get out of this.
Okay. Scotty says, as wild as it may sound, I actually think Slot is under 50% at this point. 20 Hughes, 25 Slot, 30 injuries, 25% players underperforming. He names Ibu, Mo, and Max specifically.
I think they're all fair shouts on the players.
I think where I have a tough time when I talk about players underperforming, because they definitely have. And there's players that I'm especially very, very like down on and disappointed in terms of their leadership. Verge. But the problem that I have when we talk about players underperforming is like, where do we find the line on that just being players who aren't applying themselves and buying in the way they need to right now? And how much of that is on the manager for not providing clear enough instruction and motivation for these guys, since that is literally your job as a manager? Like, that's where I struggle with that.
I think that's where I'm going with. That's why I think I'm raising the percentage more than I feel like more than tactical. I feel like he has to be able to use the Dutch connection or whatever. A guy like Van Dijk, instead of holding meetings, I wish he was like working in the wind or something. But I mean, those are the things that I would expect him to do better with to improve what you have. So you might already be given not the greatest ingredients, but you got to kind of enhance them somehow. Go ahead, Gally.
No, and I think part of it, and I agree with you completely. I think sometimes too, it's just perception and like what the moment says, right? Like right now, we know it in our Discord channel, on social media, and wherever you go, the jokes are all there, the memes. Like, Gakpo is basically, he has taken, in my opinion, the mantle from Konate as whipping boy number one
Yeah.
at the moment in the squad. And some of it is rightful. Some of his performances have been dire. Not even dire as much as we've said this before. You know, he's lackluster at times, and because we know what he's going to do, and opponents seem to know what he's going to do. Plus, I don't think this formation of him playing narrower helps him, or when he's been asked to lead the line, that doesn't help him either. So now you're putting a player who's out of confidence, a bit out of form, in positions that don't help him succeed.
Yeah.
And then wondering why the supporters are just absolutely lambasting him. I don't think it helps with the perception of the fact that he is Dutch, that, you know, let's be real. When Arne Slot took over, the left wing job was pretty much Luis Diaz's. And then Arne Slot came in and kind of made it clear at the start of his tenure that that was Cody Gakpo's position on the left. And Gakpo rewarded him with a lot of goals and some really good performances, good relationship with Robertson. I think that kind of a thing doesn't help him, right? It didn't help him when earlier in the year he kept trotting out McAllister, and people were like, can you give me Wirtz in the midfield? Can you try Szoboszlai further forward? Can you play Jones? And we just kept getting McAllister, almost like he was playing. I feel at some points in the fall, the manager decided he was going to play guys into form and fitness, and it set us so far behind. And that was a big deal with the Isak thing. And I think it made the manager, the head coach, a target, because almost everything he tried to do to get the team to where he thought it needed to be backfired. And I think when you're, that's hard, right? That's where I was going. I'm sorry. That was finished.
I think if there's like one guy, like if it's just Maka, you can do that, right? You can be like, hey, you know what? Get out there. He's eventually going to get into the flow of things. The problem was when there's like 4 or 5 guys out there trying to get in form and get in shape at the same time. Obviously, the result does not look so pretty. Roshi98 says 40% slots, 30% Hughes Edwards, 20% players, 10% other factors. Slot is the biggest factor impacting our results. Tactics, in-match adjustments, substitutions, game management have been incredibly poor. The Marseille game was our best match of the season. The first time we looked something like a proper Liverpool side for a full match. That's insane, and it's indictment of his coaching. Until he's out of the picture, addressing the other problem areas is just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Yes, I mean, in some ways I agree to that. In some ways I do not. I do feel like we are putting him, and that's where the slice for the Hughes and Edwards gets bigger and bigger. I think he's in a situation where I feel like he can't win. And I'm not as much talking about the fans, because fans will flip-flop very easily when there's like 2-3 wins in a row. But I do think in terms of the squad, I don't see anything like, I think we all hoped that AFCON would end and we would get Mo 2024 back. Nope, we got Mo 2025 winter version back. Like the one that left came right back. I think we were all hoping it could be different and we could kind of like take a step forward. I really don't see anything like, oh, this guy is going to come back though or anything. And I don't see any major moves that can suddenly elevate us either. I know there's a lot of Wharton talk and stuff like that, but like who's going to still play center back? Let's talk about little quick. Obviously, I want to talk about the game coming up Wednesday. The last Wednesday performance, it was better. Like I say, I didn't think it was that excellent, Bickler, but it does suit us. It suited us more, right? This team is exactly what this team needed in terms of the opponents. But come Wednesday, it's going to be a different story. It's going to be a team that's going to come in more than happy with a draw, because that kind of, I think, pretty much gets them to the next level, which is a huge, huge, huge accomplishment for that team. They were meant to be or thought to be the whipping boys, and they would be like dead last and stuff like that. So it is going to be a low block, and it's going to be a team. This is what scares me the most. That is going to be just piss and vinegar, man, because this is their thing. They're riding it high. They're doing something that's like historic for them. Whereas on the other side, we're kind of, I'm afraid we're going to go out there with our heads already down from Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we always get these matches where we kind of get into these situations where we have teams that are just going to close up and play low block. But that's what happens when you're a heavy favorite in football. I think I think the key here, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the Kanade situation. I can't imagine he's going to start this match. But yeah, I mean, I just think to your point about Mo, I think at some point we're going to have to, Mo's going to have to reinvent how he plays. It's similar to how we thought we were going to need to see Verge do that before Verge kind of bounced back. I don't know. This is so tough, man. I feel like I really just want to coast through this game and get through this injury free and have a decent performance. And then really focus on getting 3 points on the weekend. I think it's got to be the priority. Everybody needs to stay healthy here and kind of get through it. It's just one of those ones where I think you guys cross your fingers and hope for the best. Hope you don't have a bad performance. Hope you don't get an injury and you skate into the weekend.
I have not done the full math, but I know 2 of the teams below us are playing each other by themselves and stuff. So I don't know if a draw is going
a draw could keep us in the top 8, but a win guarantees we basically don't finish worse. Most likely we don't finish worse than 4th, and if we finish in the top 4, it basically means you get the second leg at home in the round of 16 and the quarterfinals. And that's enticing. Now you start thinking to yourself, like, I don't care if you give us Arsenal. If we can find a way to get another 0-0 at the Emirates and then we get them at Anfield in the second half of the leg with a chance to win it, you can beat anyone in Europe right now. I do believe that with the way that they're playing, but you got to beat Karabakh tomorrow. The one really saving grace is it is Newcastle on the weekend, and it's a massive 3 points. It's a required 3 points. We could finish, I believe, if we lose to Newcastle and results go the wrong way, we could finish the weekend in 15th. Yeah, it's 12th. No, it's a lot more than you think, man. We're closer to the relegation zone than we are to the title. It's like 13 and like 8. We're Everton is 3 points behind us. Like this or 2 points behind us. Like this is
12th. Yes, we can be 12th. Yes,
results can swing quickly here. Like, and I think that's an important thing to say. Like, I do believe like. The Newcastle match is huge, but Newcastle has to win for them to even guarantee promotion and get into the top half and get into that top 8. And they're playing PSG, but more importantly, PSG needs a win too. So they got to go Tuesday and they got to play PSG while on the road, I believe, in France. And we're playing, Karabakh at home and then getting a home match following it. Like, we come into that with, and that's a tough Newcastle side. So for me, I think you rotate a little bit here, but I do think you have to put out your strongest team, as strong a team as you can, for the fact that you are going into this knowing that this is your best chance at top honors. They went into the season hoping to win a double, the league and potentially the Champions League. Still have a really good shot at positioning yourself in the Champions League to win it. But I believe to win the Champions League, you need to win tomorrow. And it's not even like a question. They have to come out confident tomorrow that they have to outscore that opponent, even if they're playing in the low block. Like, not because once again, we talk about, it was good. They clawed back against Bournemouth. It took a free kick and a goal off a corner. We still aren't scoring goals from open play or creating real good chances from open play. And we got to have that change, and it's got to change fast.
I thought we created chances. Can we shoot for one, for God's sake?
Well, I mean, if Verts just wants to dribble it
on target, I guess. But there were so many times that you're like, just stop passing. Like, let's just not try to dribble into the goal. And I feel like this game is like that too, because they're going to be parking the bus. And I think that's what I was trying to pull up over there. But so, Bickler, I'll ask you based on that alone, because I do agree with Gally. You got to go out there and win, guarantee the top 8, and have a week where you can actually practice instead of, like play a game in midweek. That's what this team needs more than anything else. Do you go with the strongest 11 you have available, healthy and good to go? Or do you try to get some people in there and get somebody some rest?
I'm probably I think you're playing your strongest 11 at points throughout this match, but I think you're trying to rotate, and I would be trying to heavily rotate the midfield.
And to be fair, strongest 11 could still have Robertson starting tomorrow to give Kirkes a rest from the beginning, because I think you're confident in Robertson as like a starter. He's not afraid to start Robertson in a big match, especially if Karabakh at home is a big match. We're fucked. But like, I think you can start Jones and sit McAllister. I think you can but I'm not rotating to the point where I'm not playing Frimpong at right back, or I'm not rotating to the point where Endo's starting in the midfield.
I got you. Yeah, that makes sense. No, I get that. I mean, I was just looking at that. Carabao has 10 points, 18. So a draw would make him 11 and pretty much guarantee that they go to the next round, really.
Crazy they have 10 points.
What was that?
It's crazy they have 10 points.
Yeah, 3 wins.
They're actually
draw.
Tomorrow they will take on the dubious, or they have the newest title of all time, which is they will be the players who have traveled the furthest distance ever to play a match at Anfield.
Really? Yeah.
Where they're coming from is farther than anywhere else. They're like coming from fucking Timbuktu.
Napoli's 25th, for God's sakes. They got 8 points. So, yeah, it's just crazy what they've done.
It's impressive.
So, yeah, but they'll be okay with the draw. I guess my question to you, Bickler, is if the game is a draw, do you still go all out, or do they just shake hands and walk off thinking a draw is enough? I mean, we're going to go full force and they're going to sit back. But do you go the FIFA version of Slot, where when we need goals, he's going to have like 6-7 striker? Anybody who's attacking, go in there kind of a deal? Or do you say, hey, if we get a goal, we get a goal. If not, we just get the point. They get the point. Everybody walks away.
I think you put your strongest 11 in play with the thought that you are probably having 2 or 3 sort of pieces off the bench that you can bring in and try to win this thing late. Like, that's how I would think. Like, let's play 60, 70 minutes of solid football and try to win it in 70. And let's push for 20. And if we need to add an additional attacker, then we can.
Makes sense. Abdul Rahim says Karabakh is in Azerbaijan. I am getting a globe for our friend Gali over here. To be fair, I don't know if Gali knows.
I didn't say what I was kidding when I said Timbuktu. It was from how far away it was. I wasn't actually. It was a joke, people. Timbuktu, when I was a kid, was like what your parents would say, where they were going to send you if you didn't listen at the end of the night. Like, we'll drop you off in Timbuktu.
Siberia when I was growing up in Turkey, for example. Was it Timbuktu over here, like American version?
Yeah.
Okay, they would send me to
Siberia. Was if they were going to leave you somewhere cold. Like if they were trying to describe what my driveway was like at 11:30 this morning.
Chicago, so maybe I should have listened to them when I was a kid.
Okay. Never mind. It's an unrelated story. I was going to go into a story, a high school story.
Dude, go ahead. Let's do the entertainment.
I was just going to say in 11th grade, we had this thing where every day we had to report the daily news on a country. And this really smart girl was next to me that I used to cheat off all the time. Shocker. Anyway, she was really quiet. She's very quiet, and she used to smash all of her words together, which made it even more hilarious when she talked. And of course, her country, Azerbaijan. Every day is the best.
Oh man. The chat is going crazy with this whole Azerbaijan thing over there. But let's end with some score predictions, and then next week I'll have AI bring a map over here to talk over. Bickler.
Give me a Slot special 2-0.
Galley.
4-1.
I like the 4-1. I'm going with the 3-0. Let's go with the clean sheets. Is it Ali or Mamardashvili tomorrow?
I would play Mamardashvili, but I think he might. I would play Mamardashvili in that match. I think he'll play Allison.
Bob says 0-0. Why am I not shocked? Bob was pessimistic. Ryan is going with the 3-1. Shelton's going to go with it. Ali or Mamardashvili, Bickler?
I think Ali starts, but I'm with Gally. I would start Marma. If it's up to me.
I would think so too. If this game, why not? 3-0, 4-1, 2-0. Come on, Serzi. Mecca is going to 1-2. No, I don't see that. In a nightmare scenario, I think it's too much of a nightmare scenario to happen. That would happen if we expected to go like out there and say, oh, we're going to beat him 5-0, 6-0 and stuff like that. That would be the results if that happens. But okay. That will be it for us this week. Made a delicious pie, so we'll go and eat that now. Everybody have a great week. Come Wednesday, we'll be on top of the world again, and this team is going to win the Champions League. You heard it here from me first. Despite don't listen to anybody else over here. I gave you the news already. You don't even have to watch the rest of the tournament. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you guys soon. Take care.